The Kiseki series, which is translated as the Trail series in English, heavily builds on shared plotlines and complex political intrigue across many games. So, I'd like to welcome you to the next installment in this series of detailed, but still condensed summaries. There's a lot to cover in the third game of the Cold Steel saga, including a number of new characters from the newly established Thors Branch Campus. So, let's dive right in. Cold Steel 3 begins similarly to CS1, with a dangerous commotion occurring in one of Erebonia's military strongholds. A group of Jaegers are storming a fortress, with familiar figures from the crossbow games overseeing their efforts. It appears these foes possess a massive archaism modeled after the terrifying white ion that annihilated Gorelia Fortress a few years prior. A group of 5 military students are doing what they can to help when they're challenged by 2 of the 3 Stahlritter. The students manage to hold their own at first, though things start to look grim when Duvali arrives. Thankfully for the students, they're saved in the nick of time by their instructor, Rean Schwarzer, and a handful of other characters we know and love from the first 2 games, just all grown up. Before anything else can happen, the scene rewinds back to 3 months earlier. On the train ride to Rean's first day as an instructor, he runs into 2 familiar faces from the Sky trilogy, unbeknownst to him though, of course. He and Patrick Higharms are also shown to have a much warmer relationship than the one we saw in the previous games. They've actually become good friends this past year at Thors, though it looks like the Catastrophe's luck with Elise hasn't fared quite as well. As they bid farewell at Rean's stop, Patrick leaves Rean with an uplifting message. He truly hopes that the promise Class 7 made a year ago will come to fruition. Rean then sets foot into the quaint town of Leaves, where he's met with a pleasant surprise. Toa Herschel will be his fellow colleague at the brand new Thors Branch Campus. Once they reach the main building, Rean is introduced to his other colleagues, Major Michael of the Railway Military Police, and the beloved character from the Crossbow arc, Randolph Orlando. Randy can tell from the look on Rean's face that the latter has read all about him from the Intelligence Division files. The surprises don't end there though. It turns out that the famous, or should we say infamous, inventor Professor Schmidt will be serving as their special advisor, and the branch campus principal is none other than Aurelia Le Guin, former general of the Noble Alliance and leader of the Northern War that resulted in the annexation of Northumbria. Rean then dons a pair of glasses, Adios knows why he thought that was a good idea, for the opening ceremony. Then, Principal Le Guin gives the most casually epic opening speech ever. She blatantly calls the entire branch campus a trash bin, since all who were deemed worthless or too troublesome have been dumped here now that the main campus is accepting the Crown Prince Cedric. Nonetheless, she echoes Emperor Dreikel's famous words, "Arise, O youth, and become the foundation of the world." Then, Randolph's combat tactics and Toa's military finance classes break off into their own orientations, leaving the remaining 3 kiddos with Rean as part of Class 7, Special Operations. Class 7's orienteering exercise consists of defeating monsters in the state-of-the-art Einhell Keep. The blue-haired student introduces himself as Kurt Vander, the younger brother of Mueller. The pink-haired female is a transfer from the Military Police Academy, formerly known as the Crossbell Police Academy before the Erebonian annexation. Finally, the smallest of Rean's students is someone he's already quite acquainted with, though Altina's presence here has nothing to do with official business for the Intelligence Division this time. Professor Schmidt activates a trapdoor to commence the trial, and unlike his freshman year at Thors, Rean perfectly reacts. as does Altina. Unfortunately for Yuna and Kurt though, they find themselves in essentially the same position Elisa and Rean were in. And so, Class 7's orienteering exercise starts off on this shaky note, with Kurt and Yuna continuing to bicker as the group proceeds through the dungeon. It's only after Instructor Rean saves the two from danger, after they prematurely put away their weapons, that Yuna and Kurt put aside their differences for the time being to focus on doing their best for the rest of the exercise. But to Rean's dismay, Professor Schmidt activates a giant magic knight in front of them as their final challenge of the day. Thankfully though, the professor's assistant, our old friend Tita, reminds Rean of the brand new feature in the Arcus units. These brave orders are just what the students need to scrape by, then Rean turns to address them. In the same vein that Sarah did back in CS1, Rean presents his students with the option to transfer to another branch campus class if that's what they'd rather do. He understands that their small class size and his inexperience, having just graduated himself, probably doesn't instill much confidence in them. However, Yuna is quick to make up her mind after he finishes speaking. She decides to stay in Class 7 Special Operations, not because she wants to be in Erebonia, or even that she thinks highly of Rean, but because she's disappointed in her own failure to properly demonstrate what she's learned at the police academy. Until she's able to prove that to herself, she'll remain in Class 7. Kurt doesn't have any real reason for staying, but also has no reason to transfer. He doesn't oppose his placement by the branch campus and appreciates the chance to get some real combat experience as someone who's trying to uphold the honor of the Vander style. As for Altina, Rean won't accept fulfilling or carrying out her mission as a reason. She must make her own personal choice for continuing with Class 7. Turns out, Altina can't think of a reason for staying, but does think it's only fitting for her to be in Rean's class out of all the ones at the branch campus, given her history with him and all of old Class 7. Rean accepts Altina's answer for the time being, and with that, he officially announces the start of Class 7, Special Operations. Up above, the rest of the branch campus faculty have been peeping on them, including Principal Le Guin. She's pleased that all 3 of the branch campus orientations have gone well, which is honestly not too shabby for the trash bin that they are. Thus concludes the prologue. Fast forwarding 2 weeks, Yuna happens to catch Kurt right after he's finishing up his daily morning sword training. She uses this opportunity to blurt out an apology at last about slapping him and dissing his dual swords during orientation. Kurt accepts her apology and apologizes for being difficult as well, and the two are finally able to have a real conversation. Altina, who hasn't left for classes yet, notices and can't miss the opportunity to tease them with her typical dry humor. The tough guy from Class 8 gives them some trouble at the school's entrance. He tosses some insults at the 3 to rile them up, though Kurt calmly says he'll be happy to talk further after school. Luckily, a green-haired girl shows up and eases the tensions. The guy drops everything for now and heads off to class. Then the rest follow suit as the first bell rings. That evening, to Rean's pleasant surprise, he receives a video call from Elliot. Thanks to Prince Olivert's doing, Class 7 and their closest companions have access to this state-of-the-art app. Elliot has just graduated from the Music Academy last month and is now on his debut tour. Both can't wait to see each other in person again once Class 7 fulfills their promise. The next day is a free day. The students have all been tasked with finding a club to join by nightfall, or else they'll be automatically placed on student council. The principal has seen to it that the clubs are a mandatory part of the curriculum, much like the main campus's emphasis on them. Meanwhile, Rean continues to familiarize himself with the residents of Leaves. He's in for quite a surprise when he finds that two of his fellow Thors alums, Monk and Rosine, have taken up residence in town as well. Monk is working at the branch of Radio Trista, and Rosine is undercover for the Gralsritter again, this time at the Leaves Chapel. Later in the day, Rean heads to the campus conference room for the faculty briefing on the special field exercises scheduled for the weekend. Major Lecter arrives as their special contact, while Milliam tagged along with him to see Rean. The two share a warm reunion before Aurelia starts the meeting, prompting Lecter to officially introduce himself to his former enemy from the Civil War. Then they all sit down to read through the document, the contents within deeply troubling Toa. She can't believe their new students are being thrown to the wolves on only their first field exercise. How can they be expected to face up against elite Jaeger Corps and even Ouroboros themselves? Major Michael and Lecter explain that the RMP and Intelligence Division have their hands full dealing with the threat of Calvard along Erebonia's entire eastern border. Because the Empire has diverted most of its forces to this huge area, it's left the western side exposed to possible attack. With all that said, Major Michael assures everyone that the students will not be deployed to any known areas of battle. They'll also have state-of-the-art Panzer soldats and an armored train at their disposal. Principal Le Guin likes what she's hearing and believes these training exercises are a proper fit for the philosophy of their school. The location of their training will take place in the southern area of Sutherland Province near St. Arc. Once the meeting is adjourned, Lecter asks Rean to keep Milliam company while he transfers some important data to the Intelligence Division. Rean shows Milliam around the campus, and at their last stop, they find Altina adorably eating some pancakes to replenish her energy. While Milliam is bugging her with silly nicknames like Tilly and Sammy, Rean receives a call from Professor Schmidt instructing him to come to Einhell Keep. The professor actually accepts all three of them for this month's trial, level 1. Rean is surprised at how well Altina and Milliam sync together during combat, and it's revealed that their models are just one digit apart from the others. It's confirmed that they're indeed homunculi, and that all of their memories of the Black Workshop have been erased. This bothers Rean since despite his best efforts to research that place, he has always come up empty. It's actually kind of strange how Rean has a similar origin, only remembering his name and nothing else when Baron Schwarzer found him. The three defeat the final monster with ease, then return to the train station where Lecter is waiting. Milliam heads off with a cheerful goodbye, then Rean and Altina watch as the train departs. Altina can't help but dwell on everything Milliam is that she is not, despite her being a unit number higher than the Ironblood. However, Rean reminds Altina that she is her own person. She isn't Milliam. It'll take some time for her to settle into her own shoes. That evening, Rean is shocked to hear Abendtime, and yes, you heard that right, the Abendtime back on the air. Monk shares that Radio Trista sends Misty her fan mail via a special P.O. box in Heimdall, then she sends them back a recording. Furthermore, it turns out Vita's magic is just too damn powerful, considering the Intelligence Division has eyes on that box 24/7 and still hasn't found any leads on her whereabouts. A couple days later marks the students' first Panzer Soldat exercises, with some getting the hang of it more than others. Much to her chagrin, Yuna seems to be a natural at piloting the very things that help the Empire take over her home. Class 7 is chatting amongst each other when Instructor Rean calls Yuna and Kurt forward for a mock battle. Not in Valimar, of course, though, cause that would be overkill. The two students manage to pass their mock battle, then Instructor Randy calls Jessica and Ash forward. The latter is that same guy who messed with Class 7 earlier, and only proceeds with his troublemaking here. He ignores Randy's instructions and challenges Instructor Rean one-on-one instead. Rean actually accepts, and once the skirmish commences, he narrowly dodges the student's sneaky surprise attack. Though Ash eventually loses in the end, Rean and Randy can't help but be impressed that Ash intuitively figured out the functions of this new equipment. We fast forward to Friday as the students are loading their field exercise equipment onto their new armored train, the Derflinger. Major Claire caught a ride and is reunited with Rean, and surprisingly, Yuna as well. Turns out Claire was a temporary instructor for a while at the Military Police Academy in Crossbell, where Yuna developed a very high opinion of her. Toa and Major Michael soon join them, though the latter wonders why the principal's Soldat has yet to be loaded. That's when Aurelia arrives and shatters all of Michael's careful preparations. She already informed the Intelligence Division that she won't be accompanying the branch campus to St. Arc. The students won't grow if they have someone of her power to fall back on after all. Major Michael is clearly displeased, but knows there's no time to talk with the principal since they must leave now to remain on schedule. Aurelia sends the students off with brief but firm words of encouragement. Then as she and Schmidt watch the Derflinger depart, the professor can't help but wonder how many students will return alive. In the same ominous vein, Aurelia states that a tumultuous time is ahead, and that anyone who's unable to deal with it has no future in the first place. During the train ride, Rean asks Claire why she continues to work for a man like Osborne. The RMP may have made the Panzer Soldat deployment during the annexation of North Ambria possible, but Rean could see that Claire genuinely cared about the people in harm's way. But Claire responds that she really isn't a good person. She just owes Osborne her life ever since she lost everything 10 years ago and he took her in. She takes responsibility for everything she's done in the name of the Chancellor, but doesn't think Rean should place the same blame on himself. But just then, Major Michael enters to speak with Claire, unintentionally cutting her and Rean's talk short. And once Rena's gone, Michael asks her an odd question. Is she trying to replace Emil with Schwarzer? The next morning, a familiar face is seen watching the Derflinger enter the vicinity of St. Arc. The branch campus students do a great job unloading and setting up camp for the first time once they arrive at the designated training grounds. Class 7 makes their way to the noble city that used to serve as the capital during the Dark Ages before it transferred back to Heimdall. Claire guides them to the High Arms Mansion, where Rean is warmly reunited with Patrick's father and Celestin. Class 7 is tasked with some requests from the citizens of St. Arc, as well as some monster sighting investigations. The provincial armies have been severely downsized since the Civil War, which comes as no surprise, and are thus unable to investigate as thoroughly as they'd like. While exploring the city, they stumble across Rean's fellow alumni, Vivi, who's now working as a journalist for the Imperial Chronicle. Speaking of unexpected meetings, the group is given some helpful advice in searching for a lost cat from a red-haired girl. You're right on the money if you found her somewhat familiar. It's an older Shirley and a callback to a quest in Azure. Then, when they visit the Isthmia Great Forest for errand flowers, something very peculiar happens to Rean. Perhaps the presence of the higher elements should have clued us in to the great spiritual energy in this place, as Rean experiences a painful thumping in his chest as the world around him is dyed red and frozen in place. He has the strangest encounter with what appears to be a small young woman. Then everything is turned to normal once she disappears. Altina asks Rean if he's okay, clearly worried he may have a repeat episode of something that happened a year prior. The four arrive back in St. Arc just in time to catch the tail end of the Elliot Craig's beautiful rendition of Looking Up at the Sky. He's been doing well for himself, playing to packed venues throughout his debut tour and all. And it's sure great that his Sutherland performances just happen to align with Rean's field exercises, am I right? Onwards to the monster investigation requests, Altina and Rean's suspicions are proven correct when they're forced to destroy some of the society's archaisms. Yuna and Kurt are still catching their breath when they're approached by a pretty built older gentleman from the same direction the machines came from, mind you. He comes off as a pretty friendly and down-to-earth guy, but he sure seems to know a lot more than the average citizen about some otherwise classified info. After he takes his leave, the students take a closer look at the area he came from and are absolutely shocked. A massive pile of utterly decimated archaisms lies at the bottom of the cliff, clearly a parallel to another certain quest from the Crossbell arc. Speaking of Crossbell throwbacks, a train tragically derailed on the line towards Parm while they were away. But fortunately for them, Celestin has prepared fine steeds for their travels instead. Class 7 drops by the field camp to inform Toa and Randy of their encounter with the archaisms. Meanwhile, the ever-astute Kurt points out that all the requests they've done so far today are very Bracer-like, which has quite the implications in Erebonia's current state of affairs. The young Vander voices some pretty cynical thoughts, seeing how the authority figures who favor the Bracer Guild are all powerless right now. The new Class 7's formation can't be more than a self-satisfying act of Prince Olivert's. But Rean points out something Kurt has overlooked. All factions in the equation have approved new Class 7's curriculum, so though they may just be pawns in the end, the fact that they're allowed to exist in the first place means they don't know the whole story yet. This is a humbling moment for Kurt, and it still appears that he has something on his mind, but for now he begrudgingly accepts the correction from his instructor. Once in the quaint little town of Parm, Kurt reminisces a bit about his childhood growing up here until his 10th birthday. He remembers this branch of the Vander training hall fondly, so it's sad to see it in its closed state. Or is it really closed? They're surprised to hear loud shouts from inside the building, all belonging to Kurt's old friends. He learns from them that this training hall has been recently reopened by his very own father, who introduced a talented young swordswoman as the temporary instructor. She's off running errands at the moment, though. Now, pleasant reunions aren't only in store for Kurt in Parm, but for Rean as well when they stumble across Mint. She's become a truly talented engineer, helping the people of Parm with anything that needs fixing, though the clumsiness is definitely still there. With that, Class 7 proceeds with their investigation. Rean comes across another familiar face on the road. Annabelle is fishing as per usual and also has some intel on machine-like noises coming from a certain direction. This leads Class 7 to a gated area and road that is oddly not on the map. Even Kurt, who grew up around here, has never heard about this place. But their curiosity is put on hold by the final pair of archaisms that decide to show up. Or actually, they might have spoken too soon. Reinforcements appear, nearly forcing Rean to unleash his ogre powers, to Altina's dismay. But thankfully, a familiar blue-haired swordswoman shows up just in time to defeat the entire horde of archaisms with ease. Kurt is still in awe of such talented swordsmanship, while Laura embraces Rean, the two sharing a warm reunion. It happens that Laura is the temporary master of the Vander Training Hall, having taken the position once she had achieved mastery level of the Arcade School. In comparison, Kurt feels very inadequate as a practitioner of his family's school, though Laura is quick to remind him that everyone's path is different, and she still has much learning to do. Night has fallen by the time Class 7 returns to the training camp. All the students are casually winding down for the day, oblivious to the serious conversation their instructors are having. Major Michael is attempting to ease his colleagues' worries over a possible attack. With the Derflinger and Panzer Soldats, they're stronger than a mid-sized squadron, even if the students are inexperienced. Unfortunately, he's made to eat those words as Shirley and Duvally launch their ambush on the camp. Shirley, the new Enforcer 17 on the block, takes out the Soldats first with her anti-tank gun, causing many of the students to panic. This is not a happy reunion for the Orlando cousins, of course, and Dubes makes it clear that they only wanted to say a quick hello to the branch campus. With that, she summons a horde of archaisms, but thanks to Randy, Toa, and Michael's precise commands, the students are able to remain relatively calm and respond to the threat. Soon enough, the chaos going on ignites Shirley's bloodlust. She ditches the gun and pulls out her real weapon, the Testarossa, then launches herself straight at the Derflinger. Thankfully, that's when Fee shows up to intercept. This stroke of luck is followed up by Elliot's powerful healing and Laura's radiant blade strike that catches Dubes off guard. The young Arcade has grown significantly stronger since they last met, and all these old Class 7 reinforcements prompt Shirley and Dubes to call off the ambush, leaving the shell-shocked students to clean up the aftermath. The next morning, Michael and Lecter relay that the Imperial Army, RMP, and Intelligence Division haven't received any orders to act from the Imperial government. Everything will be left to the Provincial Army and the branch campus. The only good news Lecter has for them is that they don't need to worry about the Red Constellation's main forces, since they aren't working with the Society and are out elsewhere in Zemuria. Rean has come to expect what comes next though, given his experience over the past year. Lecter announces official orders from the Imperial government for the Ashen Chevalier, commanding him to uncover the Society's goal in the Sutherland province. He has no choice to accept, of course, and that's when Laura, Elliot, and Fee prepare to join him. Nothing will stop them from providing Rean backup, as none of them have ties to a governmental position. It turns out it deeply troubled them not being able to be there for Rean during this past year, so they got his field exercise schedule ahead of time from Olivert. New Class 7 rushes over to the floor right as they're leaving, and are shocked when Rean instructs them to stay at camp and train with the other students. Even Altina, who has provided backup in the past, is told to stay behind since she's first and foremost a student now. Then Kurt asks Rean a single question. He sees a practitioner of the Arcade School is going with him. So does that mean the Vander School? Or most importantly, he himself isn't enough? Rean's harsh response of "yes, he's not" sends Kurt quietly away. Yuna is clearly angry on her classmates' behalf, grabs Altina's hand, and takes off as well. Rean and Old Class 7 move on to St. Arc and get in touch with Toval at the secret Bracer squatting place. Agate, the heavy blade, shows up as well, and after some discussion, they come to the conclusion that Ouroboros must have a secret base in the area to store all their archaisms. Elliot suggests going to Dreknor Fortress to ask if the Imperial government, aka his dad, can spare them some intel. On the road there, Laura takes notice of Rean's reluctance to use his full spirit unification powers. And at last, Rean comes clean with what happened during the Northern War, and how his ogre powers became so powerful that he could no longer control them. He lost consciousness for 3 whole days and awoke to the news that Northumbria had been officially annexed. He hasn't used his powers since because he truly can no longer control them. It turns out fellow Thors alum Alan has made it into the 4th Division. He leads them into the massive Dreknor fortress, then Lieutenant Colonel Neidhart guides them to General Craig. Elliot demonstrates more of his growth when he effortlessly dodges the bear hug that used to smother him. But then it's time to get down to business. It's confirmed that the reason the Imperial Army's forces have been ordered to stand by is all in an effort to discredit the Provincial Army's abilities and further weaken the nobles' power. This frustrates General Craig since even though the two forces fought against each other in the Civil War, they are both still the proud protectors of Erebonia. But of course, being military makes them beholden to the chain of command. Class 7 continues to dissect the situation and press for information, eventually arriving at a vital conclusion. There must be a unique reason to Sutherland why both the Imperial government and the Provincial Army haven't taken any action against the Society yet. Seeing Class 7 asking the tough questions and arriving at the truth is a touching moment for the General. He signs an official document granting them permission to view a national secret. Now all that's left is permission from Marquis Higharms. Lord Higharms drops the big name and states they're about to witness the dark, tragic history of the Empire. And with his permission and the key in tow, Rean and the others return to that locked hidden gate just off from Parm. Meanwhile, at the branch campus training grounds, Kurt clearly understands that Instructor Rean is right about their inexperience and is just trying to protect them. But Yuna can see how he really feels just from the look on his face. And he's not the only one who's hurt and frustrated at being left behind. Yuna and Allie are too. Kurt thinks back to what his brother said, that it's solely up to him to decide his own path as a Vander. Mueller has hopes that being at the branch campus will help Kurt find his way. But what the hell is he supposed to do now? Yuna's response motivates them to take matters into their own hands and really start solidifying her as the heart of new Class 7. It's even more endearing when Kurt and Allie realize she said all of that without having a single plan. But thankfully for them, Muse has been listening in and has some info that'll definitely help them out. They also gain some additional muscle when that one guy, Ash, basically forces his way into their plan. Back with Rean and crew, Agit's joined up with them again and tells them the entire tragic truth once they reach what remains of Hamel. This is the true feels, seeing all of it for the first time for all of us who have played Sky, or are familiar with its story at the very least. They find Duvalie and Shirley at Luve and Karen's grave, and are quite surprised when the two allow them to pay their respects in peace. But of course, it wouldn't be Trails if there was no battle right after. And when the timing's right, Ash and new Class 7 make their move, actually catching the Stahlritter by surprise. Kurt has been struggling to find his purpose after his family was stripped of their role as guards to the Imperial family, but with this, he's taken his first step towards finding it again. With everything going down, Shirley activates this crazy new model of the Ion type that once destroyed the entire 5th Division. It smacks Ash and his Soldat into the cliffside with ease, though it's a complete mystery how it's even moving in the first place without a Septarian's power. Anyway, Rean has to get serious and pull out his ultimate trump card, Valimar the Ashen Knight. Back at base camp, Valimar tells Toa the location so they can make their way over eventually. Then he takes off, joining Rean to face off against the Ion. Meanwhile, Kurt runs over to Ash, the latter leaving it to the Vander to pilot the Soldat. Kurt's new confidence and resolve forges an actual combat link with his instructor, as well as the rest of new Class 7 and old Class 7. So with Kurt's help, Rean manages to find a way to put the Ion out of commission. Then Randy arrives just in time to catch Shirley ordering the Jaeger King to come out from his hiding place. Rutger's reveal is the true shocker of this chapter. Shirley literally saw him die with her own 2 eyes all those years ago after all. Fee is unbelieving and demands answers from her former family, but even crazier is when Rutger appears to summon a never-before-seen divine knight and proceeds to decimate the Ion. After all the antagonists take their leave, Rean finally gets the chance to scold his students' brash recklessness. But fortunately, old Class 7 comes to their aid, reminding Rean of all the times they disobeyed orders when they were students. Nevertheless, as an instructor, Rean truly is impressed with his students' tactics and execution in this crisis. Meanwhile, Tita and Agate get a chance to pay their personal private respects to Louve on behalf of Estelle, Joshua, and Ren. All parties then say their heartfelt goodbyes for the time being, then the branch campus heads back to their campus on the Derflinger. This closes out the first chapter of Cold Steel 3. So guys, what was your favorite part of this first chapter? I'd love to hear in the comments. Also, please leave a like if you like this to help out with the YouTube algorithm. Join our welcoming Discord community and follow me on Twitter and on Twitch. Finally, I want to thank all my wonderful patrons for their support, especially Jared Breland, Andreas Hansen, Captain Hobo, NT Luck, Big Klingy, Sam Bezjak, Thomas Perez Jr., Francesco Santoyo Rego, Silverwind847, Sathya Selvaraja, M. Meownalin, Gigi Sora, Platinum Rose, and Malcolm Lowry. Thanks for watching, and until next time guys, take care. See ya!